Good Friday morning. Thank you for checking out the latest long-range video analysis. This is Kirk Hens here, meteorologist with BAM Weather. So today, guys, official weeks 3 and 4 forecast, official final July forecast as well. So a lot of detail, a lot of research today, just kind of pulling everything together for you guys to give you the most accurate picture over the next 4 to 6 weeks especially. So starting off this morning here, we're starting off kind of just this extended period here over the next 4 to 5 days of some very warm conditions across the central United States. Drier period as a whole as well. This week our theme was storm clusters. It has been storm clusters as you checked out the morning ag report as well. We had a lot of activity in terms of the north central U.S. in terms of storm cluster potential. Areas down to the south, parts of Kansas, Missouri, parts of the Ohio Valley, much drier here in the Midwest. Now, this is the current picture as well. We have heavy storm cluster, northeastern parts of Iowa. That probably makes its way. In fact, we do anticipate it to make its way a little bit further down to the south here this morning. And then we have another one targeted late tonight into the overnight here. I circled a red area where overall we agree with this precipitation here from one of the WRF high-resolution core models here. I think in this red area, the model is underdone. I think western Illinois, far eastern parts of Iowa, northeast Missouri, somewhere around that area, I think we can pick up some additional heavier rainfall versus this model here. So overall, though, we can kind of see still storm cluster potential. Parts of northern Missouri, Iowa, southeast Missouri, Wisconsin, northern parts of Illinois here. Not widespread here, but where it rains, it will be heavy. And then looking at the current picture across the country, you can see we have some heat advisories already across the central plains. Check out the latest forecast in terms of heat indices here, starting today and then going over the next 4 days. So triple digits, kind of across Nebraska, Iowa, parts of Kansas, Missouri, all the way down to, upper 90s here, all the way down to Texas. So cooling demand really starting to spike across the central United States. That increases on our day as we go into Saturday as well. Some areas getting close to 110 degrees possibly across the central plains, north central plains. Still, some triple digits possible. Nebraska, southern parts of Minnesota, Iowa, maybe even Missouri, and parts of Kansas on the day on Sunday. And then finally, this kind of extended heat stretch, our warmest temperature of the year here for an extended period of time, starts to wind down as we get towards Monday and next week. Still heat indices in the 90s here, widespread across central plains in the Midwest and south and southeast. So cooling demand, no surprise to be higher. We're using a lot more AC across the whole entire country as a whole, above the 10-year normal as well here. So that's consistent with the week 2 forecast as well. Now, totally different pattern as we get into the weeks 3 and 4 time frame. So over the next week, again, this has not changed. Still favoring the northern plains, areas, parts of northern Nebraska, northern Iowa here, and northern parts of Illinois and Wisconsin, Michigan, kind of the periphery of the Great Lakes, where most of the storm clusters are riding over top of the ridge here, the ring of fire pattern essentially, and then parts of Texas and the deep south above normal as well, with more flow around that ridge, and that's why we're below normal in those areas as well in terms of temperatures. So again, no change there. Dry across the southern plains, southern Ohio Valley here. But as we go forward, the end of the weekend for the week 1 time frame and a week 2 time frame especially, this leads me to my next point. Especially keep your focus on this right image here. This is a look at the European ensemble, GFS ensemble, American ensemble changes. Notice how both of them getting wetter across the central plains, the Missouri Valley, Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley here. Both, and this is going on 2 to 3 straight days for week 2. We anticipate for week 2 these changes to continue into the weekend, getting into more of that second to third week of the July timeframe where we start to target more excessive rainfall. This is a look at the next 2 weeks combined here, especially look at the week 2 timeframe here. You can see the GFS ensemble probably doing the best, combined with the European ensemble in terms of starting to pick up on that excessive rainfall risk here across the central plains, bleeding into parts of the Midwest. We're not there yet, but we're getting there here, especially as we get towards that full second week of July into the third week. So again, week 1 time frame, we're kind of warm everywhere across the Midwest, central plains, above normal growing degree days, above normal cooling demand because of the southeast and Midwest higher populated areas, cooler to the west and a little bit cooler to the northeast, Texas, and the deep south because of precipitation. Getting to that week 2 time frame, what we suggested all week is starting to come to fruition. These cooler temperatures in the west are starting to migrate east. We targeted that via the MJO, continuing to progress ahead out of Phase 8 into Phase 1, kind of keeping the southeast ridge at play down here, but squashing it a little bit. That's in relation to the big SOI, Southern Oscillation drops this week here. We're still at minus 30 this morning. So again, very El Nino-like, ushering in that cooler air further east. The Bering Sea Rule also doing very well in this pattern. And what do I mean by Bering Sea Rule? Again, this is the pattern in the North Pacific where we correlate it 17 to 21 days later. This is the correlation from the 8th to 13th here. Again, slowly working that trough to the east, still feeling some residual warmth across east of the Mississippi and further down to the southeast as well. And then as we get towards the 11th to 16th here, guys, I think the storm to come through the 7th, 6 to the 8th time frame there is what ushers in the pattern change for areas from the Midwest all the way down to Texas here. Widespread below normal temperatures starting to settle in, getting in some very warm conditions for a time in the east to northeast here regions. And then as we go forward, the 14th to 19th, we're continuing this pattern transition here to just, again, cooler in the central United States as a whole, cooling demand approaching more normal in terms of the realm here across the country. The 20th to 25th, you get the theme here, guys. Overall, cooler in the central U.S., ridging down across some of the areas down to the south and to the east. Sets up a beautiful, basically a nice boundary zone here, a battle zone, if you will, in terms of precipitation here. I'll get to that in a second. Think the second half of May here, if you're looking for a comparison that is recent. And look at the SOI here. Again, we've been overall very negative. We saw that spike, and then we saw another drop here over the past few days. And as we go into early next week here, again, we will see a big-time rise in the SOI. That is a correlation for a southeast ridge for July. So that's interesting that all the data in our analog years and as well as the SOI here, the AAM, the MJO, everything is kind of talking. Speaking of the AAM, the atmospheric angular momentum, seeing some negative tendencies here. You would think not big negative tendencies, but some negative tendencies ahead in the forecast. And that for July would tell us that, hey, that southeast ridge is going to be a player, especially to the middle to end part of the month here. So look at the July positive SOI correlation, big southeast ridge, big trough in the central U.S. You look at the AAM correlation as well, and they're almost identical, and almost identical to where they are in the east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi here. So second half of May, guys, again, it's a combination of all those things. I think we resemble a lot like the second half of May. Not exactly here. I think the southeast ridge will not be as strong as it was in May, but you get the feel here. We're running that trough into that ridge. So looking at the overall temperatures from the European Weekly, which we mentioned yesterday, we anticipated to morph more towards our forecast, they look really good. And so does the European Ensemble. Cooler in the central U.S. It's not cool enough. It's a global model. It's an ensemble model, so it can't see the intensity of it, but you get the feeling that it's cooler there. It's warmer in the southeast. This is our updated weeks 3 and 4 forecast. Our cooling demand is below both the 10 and 30-year normals here. We think that there's just big time bouts of cooler air across the central parts of the United States, into the Midwest as well, from Texas to, I would say, to Chicago there, points to the north and to the west, less use of the AC, but also below normal growing degree days. South and to the east will keep up the above normal cooling demand there as well here, but just an expansive below normal temperature regime is moving in. A lot of precipitation will be incorporated into this forecast as well. Looking at precipitation, the correlation with the SOI, again, trough into the ridge, whole central plains into the Midwest Ohio Valley. The yellow and the green and the orange indicate above normal precipitation potential, drier down with the blue south and to the east underneath the ridge. The AAM, same thing. They're both talking here. So you get the drift here. You look at the MJO. I've shown you this a few times over the past 7 to 10 days here, with the blue and the purple indicating where you would be based on the MJO progression ahead above normal in precipitation. So a lot of things talking here. And just to show you the second half of May in terms of precipitation as well, we saw the spike back in excessive rainfall here. So looking at the European weeklies, it did get wetter here. It's not a perfect solution. It shows some below normal in the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee, Missouri valleys here. I think that is overdone. I don't think it's a perfect solution, but it shows wet conditions as a whole across the Central Plains into the Midwest and Ohio Valley, which I think is correct. So this is our updated weeks 3 and 4. Again, we made sure to look under every rock in terms of the research, the data here, the analog years, in terms of exact cutoffs here, as close as possible here in terms of the much above normal here. But again, because of the relation to the second half of May, the correlation to early 90 years, like 90, 91, 92, 93 here, no surprise that in this area here is the much above normal precipitation, where we expect the vast majority of both the northwest flow and the low pressure systems to kind of combine together for the better risk from the 12th to 25th time frame, the heart of July here, to be the much above normal precipitation. Other areas still above normal, just we think a little bit less excessive at times as a whole. looking at, again, I mentioned the close correlation to the early 90 years, 91, 92, 93 here in 1990. This is what it looked like. Shows a pattern almost identical to what I showed you yesterday in our El Nino analogs for July as a whole. Warm down to the south, to the east, cooler north and to the west here. So good correlation. Final July temperature from normal. Again, a lot of basis here is how we transition from week 2 and then week 3 and week 4 here to the cooler conditions up here into the north and to the west. The further south the location, the more we trend more towards normal to above normal here. Parts of the Ohio Valley still likely seeing averaging out as a whole above normal in temperatures, probably above normal in growing degree days, and cooling demand further south and to the east here. So check out our cooling demand, guys. Really cool here. 345 is our final for July, which is in between the 10 and 30-year normals here. We haven't adjusted that. I believe it's been since April. Around the April time frame, March or April, we had 345. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think we're gonna budget. I think 345 is what we're gonna go at. We stuck with 230 for overall cooling demand nationally for June. It's going to end up being 230. So our methods and our math, we feel, are adding up really well. So combine all those 3 years together. You guys know the story. You've all lived through it. We've all lived through it here. Very wet in the early 90s here as well. Matching all of the MJO, the SOI, the AAM correlation here. We get the idea. So the European weeklies as a whole for the month of July. Again, a lot of green on here. Again, a lot of this is basically averaged out from the next 2 weeks here, but all the way from parts of Texas, Missouri Valley, Ohio Valley's here, everybody in the green. So this is our updated July forecast here in terms of percent of normal precipitation here. A lot of this basically a copy of the weeks 3 and 4 forecast because of the stout signals of the above normal precipitation focused in the Missouri Valley. I would say, so, yeah, especially the Missouri Valley, the Midwest here in Ohio Valley. The tendencies to be a little bit more normal in the upper Midwest to Great Lakes and below normal south to the east here. So looking, last couple images I have for you guys, the European Weekly, let's stretch it out. Since we agree with the model pretty darn closely over the next 3 to 4 weeks, let's take a look at the 5 to 6 week pattern progression here into the first 10 days of August. Notice how it expands the cool across much of the central northern plains and bleeds it more further east into the Midwest and Northeast. Remember, our August analogs are pretty darn chilly across the central plains, east across the the whole Mississippi River, this area right in here. So it's a good transition to what we believe August turns into as overall cooler, widespread across the eastern half of the country. As that southeast ridge does start to weaken, the precipitation is able to shift further south across the Tennessee Valley, the deep south, especially the Missouri Valley, Ohio Valley, and the central plains as well. Probably going to end up doing one of these deals right in here as we get towards the end of July into early August here for a time. So again, that's about all I have for today's video update, guys. A lot of research going into this. If some of this didn't make sense or you need a little bit more detail, reach out to us. Our on-call service, our phones are always on, guys. We're always happy to help you out in any way that we can. So I'm feeling pretty confident, going into this month with our research here. So we're going to stick to our guns for now. So I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed weekend. If you're across the Central Plains, Midwest here, and some of these areas are going to be very warm, please stay cool out there. Limit that exposure to all that warmth out there if you can. Have a wonderful and great weekend.